Imagine being questioned for hours, and only the last 12 minutes are recorded. Those 12 minutes become the difference between freedom and a life sentence. That's exactly what happened to Tracey Barros, a young man from Providence, Rhode Island, who confessed to murder after hours of unrecorded interrogation. He says he was exhausted, scared, and tricked into confessing to a crime he didn't commit. The state says he confessed because he was guilty. Who's telling the truth? You're watching The Truth Lab, where real cases reveal the facts behind the headlines. It's April 27th, 2005, at 1:30 in the morning. A resident on Althea Street in Providence calls police after hearing a rapid series of pops, 5 gunshots. When officers arrive, they find 25-year-old Dea Felipe slumped in the driver's seat of a black SUV, the engine still running. He'd been shot 5 times at close range. There were no witnesses, no camera footage, and the crime scene offered little to go on. No usable fingerprints, no shell casings with identifiable prints, not even a clear motive. Detectives canvassed the area for hours, but turned up nothing. Felipe had no known enemies, and the few people who knew him described him as quiet, someone who stayed out of trouble. Months passed with no suspects in the Felipe murder. Then, on December 29th, 2005, police made what seemed like a routine arrest. 27-year-old Tracey Barros was stopped by Providence officers and found carrying a handgun without a license. When asked, he admitted the gun was his, saying simply that he carried it because the neighborhood was dangerous. He was calm, cooperative, and signed a Miranda rights form at the station. Following standard procedure, the arresting detectives notified the federal ATF, since illegal firearms often tie into larger investigations. By morning, ATF agents arrived to interview Barros, initially just to verify his story about the gun. But during that interview, something changed. The interrogation lasts many hours. No one outside that room knows exactly what was said. Only the final 12 minutes were recorded. In those 12 minutes, Barros confesses to killing Felipe, allegedly on orders from a man named Nut Sims. Sims, by that time, was already dead, murdered himself just days earlier. When the recording stops, Tracey recants. He says it was all coerced, that the police wore him down, lied to him, told him he'd never get out if he didn't confess. But the damage was done. The next time anyone would hear that tape was in a courtroom. The prosecution had no murder weapon, no fingerprints, no eyewitnesses. What they did have was that recording. The defense argued that the confession was involuntary and unreliable. They pointed out that the interrogation wasn't fully recorded, only its ending. But the judge denied the motion to suppress. The jury heard the confession, and that was enough. In 2008, Tracey Barros heard the word he did not want to hear: guilty. The jury convicted him of first-degree murder, of conspiring to commit that murder, of using a gun during the crime, and of carrying that gun without a license. The punishment was severe: 2 life sentences plus another 20 years. On appeal, Tracey Barros argued that justice had failed him. He said the police only recorded the tail end of an hours-long interrogation, leaving everything preceding a mystery. He believed the jury should have been told to question any confession that wasn't fully on tape, and he swore his words weren't voluntary. They were the result of pressure, fear, and exhaustion. The Rhode Island Supreme Court disagreed. They ruled that the state's constitution does not require full electronic recordings of interrogations. Only Alaska, they noted, had such a rule, and Rhode Island would not follow. They refused to impose a new jury instruction and affirmed the conviction. Barros would stay behind bars. Years later, Tracey tried again, this time arguing that his lawyers had failed him. He said his lawyer had dropped the ball by never bringing in an expert who could explain how false confessions happen. And he claimed the judge who handled his case wasn't impartial. The same judge who, years earlier, had called him a liar in open court. At a hearing, even his own trial lawyer admitted regret, saying he had attended a seminar on false confessions years before the trial and should have thought about hiring an expert. Still, the Rhode Island Supreme Court wasn't moved. They said the state had never recognized expert testimony on false confessions, so not using one wasn't poor lawyering. And since many states were divided on the issue, the judge's decision to deny funding was justified. Barros's appeal was denied again. This case exposes a deep divide between old-school justice and modern psychology. Science tells us people do sometimes confess to crimes they didn't commit, under exhaustion, fear, or manipulation. Yet, in Tracey Barros's case, that science never made it to the jury. 12 minutes of tape carried the weight of a man's life. The judge's words summed up the old system perfectly. Credibility decisions are quintessentially issues for a jury. But what if juries need help understanding how psychology can twist truth? Without full recordings, without context, how do we know what really happened in that interrogation room? As of 2025, there are no new appeals or successful reversals. Court documents confirm that Tracey Barros remains incarcerated, serving consecutive life terms for the 2005 murder of Felipe. He has spent nearly 2 decades behind bars, his conviction resting largely on the confession he insists was false. If justice depends on truth, then shouldn't truth depend on transparency? 12 minutes of tape decided a man's fate. But maybe what mattered most were the hours we'll never hear.